Hello everyone, welcome to Space and Time. This is Dr. Damlasu Temizel and we are at Radio İletişim. In this program, we are having a very special guest, the president of the Macromedia University of Germany, Professor Dr. Castulus Kolo. Welcome, Professor.
Yeah, thank you, Damlasu, for having me here today. It's my pleasure to talk to your students or to your colleagues and to count a little bit from my work, from my experience as a student, what I did, why I did it, and what came out of it today.
That's awesome. So it's a pleasure and it's an honor for the Istanbul University Radio İletişim to have you as a guest over here. And I guess it's a chance as well to have you, especially in this beautiful season of spring in Istanbul. And by the way, how are you doing?
Well, if we weren't in such difficult times, I would say without hesitation, yes. Personally, I had some great days in Istanbul. I'm a fan of this city, and it's also a great honor to be here at this reputed university, Istanbul University. And I'm looking forward also to further activities we might think about as joint institutions. As a president of a media university in Germany, it's important for me to introduce my students not just to the German media landscape, but to go beyond. Turkey is a media hub, not just in domestic terms, but also on an international scale. So it's good to be here.
Lovely. Thank you. Professor, we know that you have a double PhD in two different fields, one in physics and the other one in anthropology. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right.
So I think that's a very, very unique thing. Also a nice example for the students who plan their education in different fields. So from this aspect, was it difficult to study in two different fields, one after the other, and how it reflected your knowledge? How you use that knowledge, the physics knowledge, in anthropology?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I didn't plan that. It happened somehow. I already, with the decision to study physics, I followed more my heart than a clear career perspective, which is kind of a challenge for physicists already. But what you learn as a physicist is to make sense of patterns you observe in nature. You can transfer that knowledge also to understanding patterns among interactions of human beings. And that brings you to social science, to social anthropology, and to more than just physics or nature or natural sciences. What brought me to anthropology was, in fact, more a hobby than a more mature or developed career plan. As a physicist or studying physics, it's a quite rewarding study program for the ones who have access to this symmetry of nature, who have access to mathematics. So I had plenty of free time and I traveled a lot as a student, and this brought me to different cultures. So just as a side topic, I enrolled in an additional parallel program. So I in fact studied two different programs in parallel. For the beginning, it was physics was one thing and cultural anthropology was another. Only later I realized, well, there is something I can learn from physics for cultural anthropology, also vice versa. Mm-hmm. Physics is about patterns, and cultural or social anthropology is also about patterns. Science or research activity is always concerned, or mostly concerned, with something you can learn, you can derive from a specific situation for other situations.
Mm-hmm.
That's what research or science is about. And I could make use also from my understanding of numbers and my understanding of describing and capturing patterns in physics for a better understanding of anthropological or cultural, social anthropological processes. So there was a link at the end, but at the outset, it was just two different ideas I had in mind. And this is something I can suggest you as students and audience to this podcast. Follow your heart, because then you will be good. You will develop enough enthusiasm, perseverance to work hard for a better understanding. You will get good grades in the end. You can do whatever you want. And for me, it was basically also that what happened. I started from an idea without a detailed plan, and it worked out well. I became at the end president of a reputed university. And you might ask now, what does this all have to do with media? And actually, it does have to do something with media, because I'm a media professor now, and I'm developing the media programs apart from other duties I have as a president of a general university, not only focusing on media.
And I also would like to talk about your previous experience in Cern and your mesmerizing approach on the theory of everything, which would be the string theory. Is that right?
Well, this is one option. This is one proposal for that could pave the way for a theory of everything. But we are still quite far away from a theory of everything. But it's interesting that you mentioned that. And in fact, this is the link back from physics to cultural anthropology. Culture is kind of a sense-making engine. Culture is what let us explain patterns we observe with colleagues, with neighbors, with family, and let us make sense and understanding them. And of course, what physicists do is they try to make sense of the signals they see in their measurements, of the observations of nature. But ultimately, it's a system that explains something. It's not nature itself that is described in mathematics. I think this is often mistaken, that it's not nature that follows mathematical or the law of physics. I have this beautiful situation that nature can be described in a fantastically precise way by mathematics and makes it accessible. So we can derive hypotheses and test them in a laboratory, or we can find out that our theories fail and we have to further elaborate them. And in fact, there are many observations in today's physics that cannot be explained by current theories that go beyond. So we have here the case not that a theory tells us something that we can observe then later on and test, like with Einstein's general relativity theory or special relativity theory. Here is rather the other way around, that we have observations we cannot explain. And string theory is an approach.
So it's like a framework of combining or uniting general relativity with quantum mechanics. Can we define it in that way?
Well, somehow it's rather an approach to explain the multitude of different particles we have. One might ask, why don't we have just one particle and you combine it in different ways with itself to make up for new particles. But in fact, we have plenty of different particles. We have 3 families of particles and 2 major clans of particles or strands of particles. And string theory explains or could explain why we have these different particles. It explains it by the metaphor of a string. A string can vibrate in different modes, faster or slower. And it can vibrate or resonate with different frequencies or wavelengths, we say. And such resonances represent different particles. The problem is that these strings do not propagate across a 3-dimensional space with time in addition, so a 4-dimensional Minkowski space. No, they propagate through a multidimensional space, 11, or some propose or even more dimensions to embed this phenomenon. And this makes it hard to digest and to understand. There is no visual representation for it to think in more than 4 dimensions. We can visualize 3 dimensions plus time as an additional one, but not more. So currently, string theory is mathematics. It's a fantastic idea. It's very elegant. but there is not an experiment yet that allows us to prove that it's true.
Okay, so that has been a very nice explanation. And I guess while we are getting ready for the other dimensions, with even with metaverse world and maybe more metaverses upcoming. But then I also would like to ask you about your experience in CERN and how was it during your times? How you see it right now? Is there any evaluation made by the outcomes of those theories or the experiences you have done?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was a fantastic time. First of all, not so much because of physics, but because of leaving home in Germany, in Munich, my parents' home, and living with friends in a new country. CERN is built directly at the border of France and Switzerland. We decided to live on the French side, and we had a very nice villa together, young physicists, mathematicians, engineers, enjoying our life there and enjoying this very inspiring environment of bright minds from all over the world. Among them also Turkish students, professors, and it was a very close interaction also with the senior scholars and academics. So we were not so much segregated from the senior academics. We worked on experiments in collaborations, in teams, and were accepted there even as young scientists. And this was a change-making experience for me, and it opened my mind. And I can only recommend that for you. Take whatever opportunity you have to come to, even if it's just for a semester, and live in a different country. I still have friends from that times, very strong relationships that were set up. And it was also a peculiarly interesting time for physics because I arrived at CERN when they just had built a new tunnel where they set up an accelerator to accelerate positrons and electrons, to smash them into each other, a beam of electrons and positrons, the lab. And just a few days ago, this tunnel was reopened with a revised and even more powerful engine or accelerator that smashes now hadron in each other, not leptons like electrons, positrons, protons and antiprotons. And dealing with a higher energy also means that you can study effects that are different from that what you could study previously with the previous engine. You might have heard about the latest finding at CERN. This was a few years ago, the Higgs particle. It represents the Higgs field that gives mass to particles. And here the situation was different. It was proposed by theory and it was found.
So good news.
So this was so physics works, theory works. And now with this new engine, LHC, Large Hadron Collider, that's the new name of it, they try to be surprised by new physics, which is also necessary, I guess, because we talk about a €1 billion project.
Wow.
Well, actually several billions of euros. And some, of course, question whether it's worth it. I would say yes.
Definitely.
Not just for physics reason.
Well, as a media professor and as a cultural anthropologist, it's precious to have your vision on the great news about the new physics as well. So what I also believe that there is also a very strong link in between physics and how the use of physics and these new experiments in new media channels and new media elements, right?
Well, in a rather unexpected way. It's why is it worth investing so much money in such engine? This was already the question a decade or more than a decade. I have almost 3 decades. 3 decades ago when I was there as a young physicist. But there is one thing that was invented and further developed at CERN that is very important for all of you students. You might not know that the World Wide Web was invented at CERN. So this was a very nice spillover effect. This is what happens when you bring bright minds together. It was not planned. You cannot plan such revolutionary inventions.
For sure.
And I had the privilege to meet Tim Berners-Lee there and to have been one of the first users of the World Wide Web in 1989.
That sounds wonderful.
And in fact, this was also the spark that caught my interest for media. It was actually this was the time of new media or multimedia, cross-media, as we called that. And it additionally gave an excellent opportunity to combine cultural anthropology and physics. So I had the technical background, I had the cultural understanding, and a new technology that was disseminated into the world, the World Wide Web, or the internet technology. Internet is actually even older than the World Wide Web. It dates back to 1969 already.
Oh.
But we were working on the basis of the internet. We were already using it for email, we were playing games via the internet, multi-user dungeons, and we were chatting on the internet. So this is what brought me to media. And when I left Cern, I focused on innovation projects at the intersection of technology, culture, and media.
Wow, that's a big experience. Actually, I'm so happy to hear all those nice memories from your side. So, well, we are almost coming to the end of our program. It's like we never want to cut it over here. But, Professor, for your last message, students of Istanbul University, not only to the Faculty of Communication, but maybe for all the students who will listen to this podcast, I know that you are very sensitive to the education and for the foreign languages and to discover new worlds. So what would you suggest to our students, like how they can cope up with the situations in the whole world?
Yeah. First of all, it's good that you're a student. Not all young people are students. So you took already a right decision. And it's worth to study hard and to learn. As I said, I think it's very important to open your mind by traveling to other countries. And as you have seen from my personal experience, I didn't plan all this. It will happen. There is no German word for it, but I know an English word, serendipity. You have to give chance some room, some space in your life. So if you plan everything neatly, there's no room for surprise. You will not be open enough. And that's what I can suggest. I'm not saying that you shouldn't plan anything. It's good to plan something, but leave some room for surprises, for serendipity. And it will happen. That's what I can suggest you.
Oh, that's lovely. Professor, thank you so much for joining us for this lovely program. Dear students, I would like to say thank you for listening our first podcast of Space and Time with Professor Dr. Castulus Kolo, the president of the Macromedia University in Germany. As our first guest, I would like to thank him for all the university. Thank you again, Professor.
Thank you.